Valerie, the coldest and most glamorous conglomerate chairwoman in America, was currently wearing a low-cut, burgundy silk nightgown, lying obediently against my chest. She leaned in close to my ear, her breath sweet as orchids. Boss, my next secret. Do you want to hear it in bed? Or on the yacht? Welcome to Windfall, Lord. An exciting story is about to begin. In the penthouse ballroom of the Four Seasons Hotel in Manhattan, New York, the air was thick with the scent of Dom Perignon and haute couture perfume. I leaned against the edge of the bar, rubbing my throbbing temples hard, trying to process the flood of memories surging into my mind. 10 minutes ago, I was hosting a party on my private yacht. 10 minutes later, I had somehow traveled to a parallel world America, possessing the body of an unlucky guy with the same name, Archer Hayes, a bottom-tier analyst at a third-rate Wall Street investment bank. This guy had just blown up his account in the options market after naively trusting insider information. Right now, his bank balance stood at a staggering negative $2 million. In a place as cutthroat as Wall Street, owing $2 million basically meant he'd be at the bottom of the Hudson River feeding the turtles by tomorrow morning. I picked up the cheap bourbon on the bar, and just as I took a swig, an emotionless, mechanical female voice suddenly rang out in my mind. Ding! Soul fusion detected. The absolute eavesdropping system has been successfully activated. System function introduction. The host only needs to gaze at a target person for 3 seconds to see through their deepest, most fatal secrets. In this game of capital, intelligence is the nuclear weapon that can kill anything. I nearly spat out the whiskey in my mouth. A system? The standard issue golden finger for a transmigrator? Suppressing my excitement, I immediately turned my gaze toward a pot-bellied Wall Street veteran holding a wine glass nearby. This guy was a senior executive at JP Morgan Chase. Someone who was always on TV spouting nonsense about ethical investing. 3 seconds later, a line of translucent red text, visible only to me, abruptly materialized above his head. Fatal secret. Over the past 3 years, this target has embezzled $10 million in client funds to purchase luxury mansions for his 3 stripper mistresses in Las Vegas. The FBI is already onto him and will be breaking down his door at 8 a.m. tomorrow. I couldn't help but let out a whistle. My God, this system is hardcore. With this, Wall Street is like a money-printing factory with its vault doors wide open and not a single security guard in sight. Just then, the banquet hall doors were respectfully pushed open by the attendants, and the once boisterous hall fell silent in an instant. Every gaze, whether filled with awe, jealousy, or greedy desire, was drawn toward the entrance like a magnet. My God, it's Valerie Sinclair, a young trader nearby gasped, his hand trembling slightly as he held his wine glass. Valerie Sinclair, the literal ice queen of Wall Street, and the current CEO of the Sinclair Consortium. She wore a minimalist, silver backless evening gown that perfectly accentuated her flawless, statuesque figure. Her golden hair cascaded like a waterfall over her pale shoulders, and her stunning face, looking as if it were carved by the hand of God himself, bore her signature expression of coldness and arrogance. She was like Athena walking on clouds, the ultimate stunner that countless men across America dreamed of conquering. Standing beside her was a blonde man in a handcrafted custom suit, his smile gentle and refined. Tristan Pierce, heir to an old money capital conglomerate, and Valerie's enviable fiancé. Watching this golden couple, who looked as if they had stepped straight off the cover of a fashion magazine, my damn curiosity was completely piqued. What kind of unspeakable secrets could be hidden beneath the flawless mask of a woman like Valerie, a high and mighty ice queen CEO sitting on tens of billions of dollars in assets? Holding my glass, my gaze cut through the crowd and locked firmly onto Valerie's frost-cold blue eyes. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, ding! Target locked successfully. Reading fatal secret. As the system's notification faded, a line of glaring, blood-red characters slowly materialized above Valerie's noble head. After reading the contents of that line, my hand holding the wine glass froze instantly, and my pupils contracted sharply. Fatal secret. 3-hour countdown until the target's bankruptcy. At midnight tonight, her fiancé, Tristan, will use forged signatures and offshore agreements to drain all liquid assets from the Sinclair conglomerate's accounts. By tomorrow morning, this high and mighty queen of the conglomerate will be saddled with tens of billions in debt, penniless, and facing felony charges for commercial fraud. I took a deep breath, feeling my heart pounding frantically against my chest. This is a bombshell more melodramatic than any Hollywood movie. That fiancé standing next to Valerie, smiling like Captain America, is actually the ultimate scumbag who has been meticulously plotting to bleed her dry? I turned my gaze toward Tristan. 3 seconds later, the secret floating above his head confirmed it all. Fatal secret. Has prepared money laundering accounts in the Cayman Islands. Will completely destroy the Sinclair Consortium at midnight tonight, and plans to pin all the blame on Valerie after the fact. Brilliant. Simply brilliant. I watched Valerie, who was still elegantly socializing among the crowd, completely oblivious to the impending catastrophe, and a bloodthirsty sneer curled at the corners of my mouth. After tonight, This unattainable ice goddess will fall into hell and become the most miserable woman in America. But I, Archer, have never been some kind-hearted superhero. On Wall Street, someone else's disaster is my windfall carnival. Since the Sinclair Group is destined to collapse tomorrow morning, tonight is the perfect time for me to short the company. Not only will I use this lethal intelligence to earn my first $100 million since my rebirth, but I will also appear before Valerie as a savior at her most desperate and hopeless moment. I'm going to make this arrogant Wall Street goddess kneel before me and become my most obedient star employee. I downed the cheap whiskey in my glass in one gulp, slammed it onto the bar, turned around, and strode out of the banquet hall. The countdown to bankruptcy has already begun. It's time to go make a fortune. As I stepped out of the Four Seasons, a light drizzle began to fall over New York. I hailed a yellow cab and headed straight for a basement in Brooklyn. That was the secret base of my best friend, Leo Bennett. This guy was a top-tier hacker and financial geek with a mop of messy red hair, surviving year-round on a diet of Red Bull and pizza. In this cutthroat world of Wall Street, he was the only person who wouldn't stab me in the back. Good God, Archer, have you lost your mind? In the basement, Leo stared at me, his eyes bulging like two oversized onion rings. Your account is already $2 million in the red, and now you want me to go to Big Mac, the Russian mob boss, for $1 million loan? That's 50% daily interest. If you can't pay him back tomorrow, he'll grind your bones to feed his huskies. Just do as I say, Leo. I picked up a can of ice Red Bull from the table, popped the tab, and took a swig. I have an absolutely foolproof insider tip. If we play this right, by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, we won't just pay back Big Mac with interest, we'll be able to buy an entire building in Manhattan while we're at it. Seeing the look in my eyes, so certain it bordered on madness, Leo swallowed hard, gritted his teeth, and finally dialed the mobster's number. 10 minutes later, $1 million of bloodthirsty capital was wired into an illegal offshore high-leverage account. Listen, Leo. I pulled up a chair and sat at his desk, which was cluttered with 6 high-spec monitors, pointing at the K-line chart on the screen. Take this $1 million, use the maximum 100 times leverage, and go all in shorting the Sinclair Group stock. The Sinclair Group? Leo's fingers froze instantly, and he looked at me as if I were an alien. Bro, are you drunk on moonshine? That's the most stable blue-chip stock on Wall Street. That Ice Queen Valerie just announced their expansion plans for the second half of the year. Every analyst on the street is bullish. Forget those idiot analysts. Just listen to me and go all in short. Set it for the pre-market trading session. The moment the stock shows signs of a crash, close the position immediately. I patted his shoulder, my tone leaving no room for doubt. Leo took a deep breath, his hands turning into a blur across the keyboard. With one final, crisp strike of the enter key, a massive short order worth $100 million slipped silently into the unfathomable depths of the capital ocean. All that remained was to wait. Exactly midnight, as I leaned back against the sofa, the mechanical female voice of the system rang out in my mind right on schedule. Ding! Target individual Tristan Pierce has initiated the offshore transfer process. The Sinclair Consortium's liquid assets have been completely drained. System prompt. This breaking news will be released exclusively via Bloomberg Terminal tomorrow morning at 6:30 a.m. sharp. I closed my eyes with satisfaction. In a world where information is money, having the system's precise countdown made me even more composed than the Fed chair on Wall Street. The long night passed quickly. At 6:25 a.m., the New York sky was still a murky gray. Leo was biting his nails nervously, his eyes bloodshot as he stared intently at the flat stock curve on the screen. Archer, there are 5 minutes left until pre-market trading. If your insider tip is wrong, Big Mac's guys will be knocking on the door with baseball bats in 10 minutes. It's 6:30. I looked at the wall clock and smiled slightly. The show begins. Almost the exact second the words left my mouth, one of the monitors in front of Leo let out a piercing alarm. On the Bloomberg terminal, a bolded news headline in red instantly flooded the entire Wall Street network. Shocking scandal. Sinclair conglomerate hollowed out. Fiancé flees with funds as Ice Queen faces felony charges. Good God. Leo stared at the news, frozen in his chair as if struck by lightning. Subsequently, the market delivered the most frantic reaction imaginable. As pre-market trading opened, the Sinclair Consortium stock plummeted like a patient whose oxygen tube had been pulled. $150, $80, $30, $5. Panic selling triggered a stampede effect, with retail investors and institutions across Wall Street desperately cutting their losses. Meanwhile, hidden in the shadows, I opened my jaws wide, ravenously devouring this massive windfall of wealth falling from the sky. Close the positions, Leo. Close them now, I roared. My God! Oh my God! Leo screamed, his fingers flying across the keyboard in a frenzy. When all the trades were finally settled, the figure in the center of the screen, representing our offshore account balance, finally stopped flickering. Ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, millions, 10 millions, 100 millions. A full $100 million, after deducting the $1.5 million owed to Big Mike the mobster and clearing my own $2 million debt. Nearly $100 million in pure profit sat quietly in my account. In a single night, I went from a debt-ridden Wall Street bottom feeder on the brink of death to a billionaire worth 9 figures. This is the power of the system. Archer, we're rich! We're rich! Leo shouted frantically, jumping out of his chair and throwing his arms around me. This is just the beginning. Man, I pushed the excited, red-haired nerd aside, walked over to the coat rack, and pulled on a black trench coat. Where are you going? We should be popping champagne right now. Booking out the most expensive strip club in all of Manhattan, Leo shouted. A strip club? That kind of lowbrow taste is beneath my net worth now. I straightened the collar of my coat and turned to look at the worsening rainstorm outside, a playful smirk tugging at the corner of my mouth. I'm going to pick up a real treasure. An ice queen who just fell from her pedestal on Wall Street and currently has nowhere to go. I pushed open the basement door and stepped out into the cold morning rain of New York City. Valerie, you must be freezing right now. Aren't you? The torrential rain in Manhattan poured down like a breached dam, and the entire financial district was completely submerged in the wailing of sirens and the blinding glare of red police lights. I sat in the back of a bulletproof Maybach I had just rented for $10,000 a day, through the windows coated in dark explosion-proof film. I quietly watched the farce unfolding outside the Sinclair Consortium headquarters. A large contingent of FBI agents had already cordoned off the scene, while countless reporters, wielding cameras like weapons, swarmed like crazed hyenas, trying to break through the perimeter in search of the leading lady of this scandal of the century. Boss, the target is in the back alley. The driver and temporary bodyguard, a retired Navy SEAL veteran, reported in a low voice through his earpiece. Drive over. The Maybach silently glided into a dark, damp back alley, beside a row of trash cans. I finally spotted her, the high and mighty Ice Queen. Gone was the nobility and arrogance she had displayed at last night's gala. Her expensive silver evening gown was completely stained black by muddy water. She was barefoot, clutching a pair of broken high heels in her hand. Her long blonde hair matted damply against her pale cheeks, shivering in the cold rain. She looked like a stray cat abandoned by the world. The car door opened, holding a massive black umbrella. I stepped out into the downpour and came to a halt in front of her. Valerie jerked her head up. Her blue eyes, once cold and haughty, now filled with wariness, despair, and a profound exhaustion. If you're a reporter, get lost. If you're here to silence me on Tristan's orders, get it over with. Her voice was hoarse, yet she still clung to a shred of unyielding pride. I couldn't help but smile, tilting the umbrella forward to shield her from the pelting rain. That coward Tristan is currently hiding on a sunny beach in the Cayman Islands counting his money. He doesn't have the guts to hire someone to kill you in Manhattan. I looked into her eyes, my tone calm. Get in the car, Miss Sinclair. Unless you truly want to spend the rest of your life in the sewers of a federal prison as a convicted fraudster. Valerie stared at me intently for a few seconds. Eventually, her survival instinct triumphed over her defensiveness. She limped into the warm back seat of the Maybach. Half an hour later, in a luxurious penthouse with a stunning view next to Central Park, I had purchased this apartment in full for $10 million using the money I just earned while on the way here. To me, money is now just a number, and a grand display of wealth is a necessary weapon for conquering this queen. Valerie sat on the wide leather sofa, draped in a dry cashmere bath towel and holding a glass of Macallan whiskey I had handed her. A hint of color had returned to her face, and her gaze had regained its sharpness. Who are you? How could you possibly know that Tristan has accounts in the Cayman Islands? Even the FBI hasn't gotten that far yet. She stared at me as if scrutinizing an extremely dangerous enemy. My name is Archer Hayes. I sat down in the armchair opposite her and crossed my legs. As for how I know, it's because this morning, I legally made $100 million by shorting your company. I have your dear fiancé's idiotic maneuvers to thank for that. You shorted my company? Valerie's hand jerked violently, spilling whiskey onto the carpet. A fire of rage ignited in her eyes. You're a parasite, bleeding me dry. Don't make it sound so ugly, Valerie. Wall Street has always been a massive slaughterhouse. It's eat or be eaten. I leaned forward, my gaze becoming intensely aggressive. Tristan betrayed you, seized your conglomerate, and turned you into a nationwide fugitive and scapegoat. You're penniless now, and all your bank accounts are frozen. How do you plan to get your revenge? With that broken high heel in your hand? Valerie's breathing grew shallow and rapid. She bit her lip so hard that a trace of blood seeped from the corner of her mouth. She knew I was telling the truth. In this world where capital reigns supreme, without money, she couldn't even afford to hire a decent lawyer. I pulled a pre-prepared document from my coat and tossed it directly in front of her. This is a Bet on Success partnership agreement. I pointed at the document, my tone turning cold and domineering. Within the hour, I will deposit $10 million into your offshore secure account to resolve your immediate legal troubles and personal crises. After that, I will provide you with unlimited financial backing to help you utterly destroy Tristan and reclaim everything you've lost. Valerie looked at the document, a flicker of disbelief flashing in her eyes, but she immediately asked warily, "What is the price?" "There is no such thing as a free lunch in this world. The price is simple." I stood up, walked over to her, and looked down at her from a commanding height. "From the moment you sign your name, you are my private property. You will serve as my CEO on the front lines of Wall Street, managing my entire business empire for me. I take 90% of all profits you generate in the future, and you must obey my every instruction unconditionally." This was, quite simply, an utterly humiliating modern-day contract of indentured servitude. Valerie looked up, staring at me intently, the fury in her eyes nearly burning me to ashes. As the former queen of Wall Street, when had she ever endured such humiliation? "If you refuse, the door is right there." I pointed toward the exit with indifference. "You can walk out, and in 10 minutes, federal agents will have you in handcuffs, stuffing you into a police car like a dog." The air seemed to freeze at this very moment. Ding! The system has detected that the target character is undergoing an intense psychological struggle. 3 minutes later, Valerie took a deep breath and closed her eyes, masking all the humiliation and resentment. When she opened them again, those blue eyes held nothing but the cold flames of revenge. She grabbed the diamond-encrusted fountain pen from the desk and signed her name heavily on the final page of the agreement. "Boss." She looked up at me, her voice as cold as ice. "Tell me, when do we start killing?" I looked at her exquisite face and smiled with satisfaction. "Wall Street, get ready for a bloodbath." It has been a full week since Valerie signed that contract of indenture in the pouring rain. During this week, I dropped $10 million to hire the top legal team in the country, successfully dragging the FBI's arrest warrant for Valerie into a lengthy hearing process. Meanwhile, leveraging the system's absolute intelligence, I paid a discreet visit to the president of Gotham Trust Bank on Wall Street. In just 3 seconds, the system saw through the fatal secret of that sanctimonious president, his involvement in money laundering through underground banks. As compensation for keeping his secret, I effortlessly secured an unrestricted line of credit worth $1 billion. Now, it is time to show that hypocrite Tristan what I'm made of. At the Waldorf Astoria, New York, a private M&A auction gathering Wall Street's top predators was underway. In the center of the hall, Tristan Pierce, dressed in a flashy white suit and holding a glass of champagne, grinned like a quarterback who had just won the Super Bowl. He was preparing to secure the Pandora Gold Vein project, the largest in South America, on behalf of the Pierce Consortium for $800 million. "Gentlemen, this is not just a victory for the Pierce Consortium, but a victory for Wall Street," Tristan announced loudly to the sycophantic capitalists surrounding him. He believed that by pinning all the blame on Valerie and laundering his money in the Cayman Islands, he could return unscathed to continue his reign as a Wall Street tycoon. Thud! The heavy double walnut doors of the ballroom were violently shoved open by 2 bodyguards, the loud crash instantly cutting Tristan's speech short. Every eye in the room swung simultaneously toward the main entrance. I was dressed in a perfectly tailored black haute couture suit, one hand tucked casually in my trouser pocket as I strolled into the hall with a leisurely pace. Walking half a step behind me to my left was none other than Valerie, fresh from the depths of hell. Today, she wore a provocative wine-red silk evening gown with a high slit, her exquisite makeup as sharp and precise as a fighter jet's radar. Stepping in 12-centimeter red-bottomed heels, every stride she took radiated a queenly aura that left the men breathless and the women consumed with envy. My God, is that Valerie? Isn't she supposed to be in prison? Who is that young Asian man walking in front of her? Even the queen of the Sinclair family is willing to follow behind him? A suppressed gasp erupted from the crowd. The smile on Tristan's face froze instantly. He stared intently at Valerie, a flicker of panic crossing his eyes before being swiftly replaced by a vicious sneer. "My dear Valerie, I really didn't expect you to have the nerve to show your face here." Tristan set down his wine glass and approached with a cold laugh. "What's this? Is this wet behind the ears pretty boy next to you the new backer you found? Do you actually expect him to help you pay off those tens of billions in debt?" Ignoring Tristan's barking, I walked straight up to the representative of the South American mining company in charge of the auction. In my mind, the system's cold, mechanical voice rang out right on cue. Ding! Detected target Tristan Pierce's core plan. Fatal secret. The target's acquisition of the gold project is not for investment, but to serve as collateral for a money laundering channel for a mafia syndicate in the Cayman Islands. If the acquisition fails, the mafia will issue a kill order on him tonight. Hearing this intelligence, the smile on my lips deepened. This was practically handing me the hilt of the blade, an $800 million bid, coupled with tedious installments and due diligence. You actually find these garbage terms acceptable? I looked at the South American representative, my tone carrying unabashed contempt. Sir, please watch your language. Mr. Pierce's offer is currently the highest in the room. The representative frowned, clearly displeased by my arrogant attitude. That's in the past. I snapped my fingers, and Valerie immediately understood. She stepped forward, pulled a proof of funds bearing the top-secret seal of Gotham Trust Bank from her Hermes handbag, and slammed it down onto the representative's desk. $1 billion. I looked at Tristan's face, which had instantly turned deathly pale, and said each word with deliberate emphasis. A one-time payment in full, with no strings attached. Before midnight tonight, that money will be sitting in your South American company's account. The entire hall instantly fell into a deathly silence. $1 billion. All cash. Paid in full. This was a level of madness unheard of even on Wall Street. Even those old Wall Street foxes, who had seen it all, were now staring with their mouths agape in shock. That's impossible. How could Gotham Trust issue you $1 billion cash guarantee? Tristan shrieked like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. He rushed to the table, staring intently at the seal on the document, his entire body trembling. Nothing is impossible. Tristan. Valerie stood by my side, looking at her former fiancé with eyes full of undisguised pity and mockery. While you were busy hiding in the shadows playing petty schemes, my boss was using raw power to crush all of Wall Street. After carefully verifying the authenticity of the proof of funds, the South American representative's hands were shaking with excitement. He picked up the gavel without a moment's hesitation. $1 billion once, $1 billion twice, $1 billion 3 times. Sold. Congratulations, sir. The Pandora Gold project belongs to you. The moment the gavel fell, Tristan seemed to have all his strength drained from him, collapsing onto the floor. He knew that without this project, the Cayman Islands Mafia would undoubtedly chop him into pieces and feed him to the sharks. I looked down at the pathetic heap that was Tristan, let out a cold sneer, and turned to walk out of the hall. Valerie followed closely by my side. As we passed through the long corridor of the hall, she suddenly stopped and leaned in toward my shoulder. That captivating scent of perfume, mingled with her warm breath, brushed past my ear. Boss, the way you just threw down $1 billion was absolutely captivating. She lowered her voice, and those icy blue eyes of hers were now shimmering with an intensely dangerous allure. My next secret. Do you want to hear it in the car? Or back at your penthouse? I glanced at her, the corners of my mouth turning up slightly. This woman's wild side had only just been awakened. Ever since he blew that $1 billion gold project at the Waldorf Astoria, Tristan had become a walking dead man on Wall Street. The Cayman Islands Mafia has issued a hit order against him in the underworld, driven into a corner to save his own life. This Wall Street rat has finally bared his most frantic fangs. In the top-floor CEO office of Imperial Capital, I sat in the expansive executive chair with my legs crossed atop the mahogany desk. Valerie, dressed in a sharp black professional suit, stood before the massive floor-to-ceiling window, reporting on the progress of our encirclement of the Pierce Consortium. Right then, the system's notification chimed in my mind, sounding like a Reaper's death knell. Ding! The system has detected target Tristan Pierce's ultimate trump card. Fatal secret. The target has secretly embezzled the Pierce family's final $500 million irrevocable trust fund and utilized illegal 100x leverage to frantically short the Nasdaq-listed company Nova Biotech. He has bribed the media and will release forged negative news in 10 minutes claiming the FDA rejected their new anti-cancer drug, attempting to incite panic and cash out to cover his debts to the mob. True intelligence. Nova Biotech's new drug was actually secretly granted full approval last night. The official announcement will be released promptly at the 9:30 a.m. market opening. After listening to the system's broadcast, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Tristan, that idiot. He actually thinks he can use forged bearish news to combat an official bullish announcement. This isn't just playing with fire. This is dancing the tap dance while hugging a nuclear bomb. Valerie. I lowered my legs and pressed the intercom on my desk. Connect me to Leo's trading room. Tell that redhead to take every cent of liquid capital on our books and go all in on a long position the moment Nova Biotech stock crashes in 10 minutes. I want to sweep up every single circulating share on the market. Valerie froze for a moment, but she was now completely accustomed to absolute obedience to my instructions. Without any nonsense, she immediately grabbed the phone and began making arrangements. 10 minutes later, the forged breaking news suddenly popped up on major financial screens across Wall Street. Nova Biotech stock price instantly plummeted in a cliff-like crash. Panic selling flooded the market, and the share price was cut in half within just a few minutes. Tristan's $500 million short position sucked blood frantically amidst this man-made panic. Boss, the stock price has hit rock bottom. Valerie stared at the screen, a hint of tension in her voice. Buy everything, I commanded coldly. At 9:30 a.m., just as the opening bell rang on the Nasdaq, the official FDA website and major authoritative media outlets simultaneously released the highest-level announcement. Nova Biotech's new anti-cancer drug had been approved. The entirety of Wall Street exploded instantly. Retail investors and institutions who had just panic-sold began frantically scrambling to buy back shares. Meanwhile, I had already established a massive long position at the very bottom. Nova Biotech stock price took off like a falcon rocket, skyrocketing instantly with gains exceeding 300%, even triggering a rare upward circuit breaker. Tristan's short position, leveraged at 100 times, hit the forced liquidation red line the very second the stock price surged. The $500 million family trust vanished into thin air in less than a minute. The Pierce family? an old money capital syndicate that had been entrenched on Wall Street for nearly a century, was officially declared bankrupt. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, my office door was violently pushed open. 2 burly Russian mobsters dragged Tristan in like a dead dog, his face covered in blood and his clothes torn to rags, and threw him heavily onto the pure wool carpet in front of my desk. "Mr. Archer, here is the cargo you requested." One of the burly men bowed respectfully to me. "Big Mike said we've received your massive wire transfer. This guy's debt to us is wiped clean. He's your private toy now." I gave a wave of my hand, and the 2 bruisers exited the room, closing the heavy door behind them. Tristan struggled to push himself up from the carpet. His once handsome and dashing face was now swollen like a rotten tomato, and he was missing a front tooth. When he saw Valerie standing beside me, his eyes erupted with a look of extreme terror and humiliation. With a heavy thud, he collapsed. This former high and mighty Wall Street golden boy fell heavily to his knees before me. "Archer. No. Mr. Hayes. Please, I beg you. Let me go." Tristan broke down into hysterical sobs, mucus and tears mixing with blood as they flowed into his mouth. "I was wrong. I shouldn't have messed with Valerie. I shouldn't have crossed you. My family is bankrupt. I have nothing left. Please, just treat me like a piece of trash and let me go." Seeing my indifference, he crawled toward Valerie like a rabid dog, reaching out to grab her stilettos. "Valerie, darling, we were in love once. Help me plead with the boss. As long as he's willing to spare my life, I'll do anything. I can even give you all the dirt on the politicians who are longtime associates of the Pierce family." Valerie took a step back in disgust, raising her red-bottomed heel and kicking Tristan squarely in the face, sending him sprawling back onto the ground. "Don't use your disgusting mouth to say my name." Valerie looked down at him, her eyes devoid of any emotion, filled only with a coldness as if she were looking at a pile of trash. "Tristan, when you forged my signature to push tens of billions in debt onto me, you should have known this day would come." I stood up, walked over to Tristan, crouched down, and patted his wretched, battered face. "On Wall Street, a gambler who has lost all his chips doesn't deserve to breathe the air here." I stood up and pulled out a tissue to wipe my hands, as if I had touched something utterly filthy. "Throw him to Big Mike," I said coldly, my back turned to Tristan. "Tell the mob that I'm done with this toy. They can do whatever they want with him, as long as he doesn't dirty the soles of my shoes within the limits of New York." Amidst Tristan's shrill, despairing screams, 2 burly men entered once again and dragged him out like a piece of trash. A deathly silence returned to the office. Valerie turned to look at me, her blue eyes shimmering with a near-fanatical adoration. She walked over to me and took the initiative to pour me a glass of champagne. "Boss," her voice trembled slightly with excitement, "the old king of Wall Street is dead. Where to next?" I took the glass and turned my gaze toward the distant west. "Ready the private jet. Next target, Silicon Valley." The bright California sunshine pierced through the early morning mist of the Bay Area. My Gulfstream G650 private jet landed smoothly at San Francisco International Airport. The decaying stench of New York's old money was left far behind. This is Silicon Valley, the heart of technology and innovation in America. To me, it felt more like a virgin land flowing with gold and the blood of unicorns. Valerie and I stepped into a black Cadillac Escalade, and the motorcade headed straight for a tech startup in Palo Alto called Neurometrics. To the outside world, this was an AI company on the brink of bankruptcy. After burning through $30 million in venture capital, their founding team had yet to produce a single commercializable product. They were currently facing the desperate situation of a hostile takeover at a rock-bottom price by the Silicon Valley giant, Genesis Tech. But my system had provided me with a piece of intelligence powerful enough to overturn the entire global landscape. Ding! Core secret of the target company Neurometrics detected. Fatal secret. The company's chief scientist unexpectedly broke through the barriers of quantum algorithms during a deep learning test in the early hours of last night. They have actually succeeded in developing the world's first prototype of a true artificial general intelligence, AGI, the value of which is immeasurable. However, due to internal non-disclosure agreements and a crash of the test server, this news is currently known only to the chief scientist and has not yet been reported to the board of directors. Additional intelligence representatives from Genesis Tech will arrive in 1 hour, attempting to forcibly buy out all of the company's patents for a mere $50 million. This is why I flew across the entire United States to Silicon Valley. I need to intercept this super unicorn that could change human history before anyone else realizes what is happening. The Escalade pulled up in front of a dilapidated office building, flanked by several bodyguards. Valerie and I pushed open the doors to the Neuromatrix conference room. In the conference room, the company's founders were smoking gloomily, with a pile of crumpled financial statements scattered across the table. Everyone froze at the sight of us. A group of uninvited guests. "Who are you? The people from Genesis aren't supposed to arrive until this afternoon." The CEO, sitting at the head of the table with heavy dark circles under his eyes, stood up with a frown. "My name is Archer Hayes, founder of Imperial Capital." I ignored his outstretched hand and walked straight to the conference table to take a seat. I'm here to save your lives. At the mention of Imperial Capital, the expressions of the founders shifted instantly. Our recent bloody track record of shorting the Peers Consortium on Wall Street had already spread throughout the American business community. Mr. Hayes, our company currently has no plans to bring in new investment. We are in merger and acquisition negotiations with Genesis Technology, the CEO said, forcing a look of composure. I let out a cold sneer and turned my gaze toward the chief scientist sitting in the corner, who was frantically hammering away at code on his laptop. That otaku with the thick-rimmed glasses was the true key to this gold mine. Genesis offered you a $50 million buyout, didn't they? I leaned back in my chair, scanning the conference room. They won't just take all your patents. They'll kick every single one of you founders to the curb, turning all your years of hard work into nothing more than a set of figures on their financial report. A deathly silence fell over the room, and the expressions on the founders' faces turned incredibly grim. Valerie. I snapped my fingers. Valerie immediately pulled a thick agreement from her briefcase and placed it on the conference table, alongside a cashier's check from a Swiss bank. $10 billion. I calmly uttered a figure that made everyone doubt their own hearing. To buy 80% of your company's shares, you can retain 20% in stock options. And I promise that daily operations and the R&D team will remain entirely under your control. Imperial Capital will only be responsible for providing unlimited computing power support and commercialization channels. $10 billion? The CEO's cigarette butt dropped onto his lap, burning him so badly he jumped up. Yet he didn't even bother to brush it off. You're not joking, are you? I never joke. I stared at the chief scientist, who was now completely stunned. I know what breakthrough you achieved in quantum algorithms last night. 10 billion is the minimum respect for your AI prototype. Now, sign it, or I walk out that door and you can go beg Genesis Tech for scraps. This offer was like a high-yield nuclear bomb, instantly obliterating the psychological defenses of these Silicon Valley techies. A $10 billion valuation, injected directly in cash. This was an unprecedented myth in the entire history of Silicon Valley venture capital. Without a moment's hesitation, and before they could even call their lawyers, the founders signed their names on the astronomical acquisition agreement with trembling hands. At the exact moment the agreement took effect, the conference room door was pushed open once again. The arrogant senior vice president of Genesis Technology walked in with a team of lawyers, holding a thick acquisition contract in his hand. My apologies for being late. The vice president swept a contemptuous gaze across the room and tossed the $50 million contract directly onto the table. You should thank God that we are willing to pay $50 million for your useless scrap metal. Now, sign it. Excuse me? I stood up, adjusted the buttons of my suit, and stepped in front of the vice president. As of 5 minutes ago, this company now belongs to the Hayes family. The vice president froze for a moment, when he clearly saw the $10 billion acquisition agreement on the table, stamped with the seal of Imperial Capital. His eyes nearly popped out of his head. 10 billion? Are you insane? Even if you count every bit of the Silicon Valley bubble, this damn company isn't worth that price. This is commercial fraud, he roared hysterically. Security. Throw these pieces of trash out. They are interfering with our company's normal operations. Valerie commanded coldly, shoved aside by several bodyguards in black. The people from Genesis Tech were driven out of the building like stray dogs. That afternoon, the headlines of the Wall Street Journal and Silicon Valley Insider were completely dominated by the news of Empire Capital's $10 billion gamble to acquire a startup. The entire American investment community was mocking me, calling me a madman waving a checkbook. But I knew that by next week, when the first-generation AI system of Neural Matrix officially debuted at the Worldwide Developers Conference, the entire world would go wild for it. 10 billion? That was merely a cheap ticket to the gates of a trillion-dollar empire. On the third day, just as the entire world was waiting to laugh at me for spending 10 billion on a bankrupt company, the mockery transformed into collective panic. After I authorized Neural Matrix to release the first test video of the AI's self-evolution, tech stocks on the Nasdaq plummeted across the board. All those so-called Silicon Valley giants suddenly looked like primitive cavemen in the face of true artificial general intelligence. This struck at the core interests of too many established tech titans. Since they couldn't defeat me in the capital markets, those filthy rats turned their gaze toward the dark underworld. That night, the California sky was exceptionally gloomy. I was sitting in the presidential suite of the Four Seasons Silicon Valley, sipping bourbon and reviewing the schedule for the next day's Global Developers Conference. Suddenly, my heart clenched violently, and the system's alarm blared in my mind with an unprecedented, piercing volume, flooding my entire field of vision with a blinding, blood-red hue. Red alert. Maximum priority. Red alert. Maximum priority. Host core agent, Valerie Sinclair, is facing a fatal crisis. Source of fatal crisis. Silicon Valley's Genesis Tech, in alliance with 3 legacy conglomerates, has placed a $50 million bounty on the dark web to hire the notorious Viper mercenary squad. The target has been kidnapped. Execution is estimated to take place in 1 hour at the abandoned Pier 7 in the San Francisco Bay Area. Enemy intelligence. 8 fully armed retired Special Forces operatives, equipped with military-grade assault rifles, thermal imagers, and C4 explosives. The whiskey glass in my hand shattered, blood mixing with the liquor as it dripped onto the expensive carpet. Those idiots, they've crossed the line. Valerie isn't just my most powerful weapon in the business world. She is a queen I groomed myself to dare touch what belongs to me. I'll make sure their entire conglomerate regrets it in hell. Leo, I grabbed the encrypted communicator off the desk and roared at my best friend back in New York. Hack into every surveillance network at San Francisco's Pier 7. Jam the police communications in that area. I don't want any cops getting in my way. Boss, are you crazy? Those are military-grade mercenaries. You need a professional security team. Leo shouted in terror over the comms. A security team is too slow. Clear the way for me. Now. I grabbed the black trench coat from the sofa, pulled a Glock 19 tactical pistol and 2 spare magazines from my private armory, rushed out of the suite, and jumped into an armored Ford Raptor. In the dead of night, the Ford Raptor tore down the San Francisco highway like a manic beast, its speed screaming up to 160 miles per hour. Leo, we're 2 miles from the destination. I need a precise layout of the enemy's defenses. I commanded coldly into my earpiece while wrenching the steering wheel to drift through a sharp turn. System tactical assistance activated. In my mind, the system's voice became as cold as a tactical computer. A layer of faint blue holographic projection appeared in my field of vision, revealing the architectural structure of Pier 7, the distribution of enemy positions, and even the frequency of their heartbeats in exhaustive detail. 2 sentries at the entrance, 1 sniper nest on the 2nd floor, and the remaining 5 are in the main warehouse. Valerie is tied to a steel pillar in the center of the warehouse. Her vital signs are weak but stable. The system reported with clinical precision. Copy that. The Ford Raptor smashed straight through the chain-link fence surrounding the pier. I didn't hit the brakes. The moment the truck tore into the dock area, I kicked the door open and rolled into the shadows of a stack of shipping containers. The runaway pickup roared forward, slamming into the 2 sentries at the gate and sending them skyward in a massive explosion. A piercing alarm echoed over the abandoned pier. Enemy attack. 12 o'clock. The sniper on the 2nd floor had barely shouted into his radio before my Glock was already raised. With the system's assisted aiming, even in the dead of night, the target's head glowed in my vision like a massive red light bulb. Thud! A single 9mm hollow-point round precisely penetrated the wooden board 300 meters away, and the sniper's head exploded like a watermelon. Like a ghost, I used the shipping containers as cover, rapidly closing in on the main warehouse. With the system's absolute vision, these so-called elite mercenaries were as good as blind before me. I could anticipate every tactical maneuver they made, and I could even see the action of the bullets being chambered in their barrels. Pft, pft. The suppressed Glock fired 2 consecutive double taps, and 2 more mercenaries attempting to flank me collapsed into pools of blood. I kicked open the rusted iron gates of the main warehouse. Inside the cavernous space, the 3 remaining mercenaries were aiming their assault rifles steadily at the entrance. Behind them, Valerie was brutally chained to a steel pillar. Her expensive haute couture suit was torn, and her fair skin was covered in bloody welts. Yet her blue eyes glared forward, devoid of any cowardly plea for mercy. Fire! The mercenary captain roared. But a fraction of a second before they could pull their triggers, I had already used the momentum of the collapsing gates to execute a tactical slide to the side. Fuel barrel on the left. The system prompt chimed. I raised my hand and fired a single shot. The bullet struck the industrial waste oil drum stacked in the corner with pinpoint accuracy, and a massive burst of flame and thick smoke instantly swallowed the 2 enemies on the left. Under the cover of the flames, I lunged toward the final mercenary captain like a cheetah. The moment he frantically tried to turn his muzzle, I kicked the rifle out of his hands and slammed the barrel of my Glock firmly against his chin. Tell that old man at Genesis Tech to wash his neck and wait for me. Thud! With the final gunshot, the entire warehouse fell into a deathly silence, broken only by the crackling of burning oil drums nearby. I holstered my gun, strode to the steel pillar, and smashed the chains binding Valerie with the butt of my weapon. Her strength failed her, and she slumped forward, but I caught her firmly in my arms. Boss! Valerie leaned weakly against my chest, a pale smile somehow breaking through her blood-stained face. Does this count as after-sales service regardless of the cost? Shut up, you damn woman. I took off my trench coat to wrap her trembling body and lifted her up in my arms. I spent $10 billion to make you the tech queen. Even if you're going to die, you're going to earn back every cent of that cost before you do. She buried her head deep into my chest, listening to my frantic heartbeat, and whispered softly, As you wish, my God. Holding her in my arms, I strode out of the burning abandoned warehouse and into the darkest hour of the night before the dawn. It was time for those rats hiding in the shadows to face their true annihilation. 6 months after walking out of that burning abandoned warehouse at Pier 7, I had used brutal methods to completely tear apart and reassemble the entire commercial landscape of the United States. Genesis Tech, along with the 2 veteran Wall Street consortia lurking behind them, paid a devastating price for their stupidity, without me having to resort to any physical force. Under the system's absolute eavesdropping, the filthiest secrets hidden in their basements, political contributions, transnational money laundering, and even the sale of military secrets to hostile overseas powers, all became a lethal nuclear arsenal in my hands. I had Leo anonymously send this ironclad evidence to the FBI and the SEC. Overnight, these three once invincible consortia collapsed. Those high and mighty chairmen and vice presidents were handcuffed and stuffed into bulletproof police cars under the cover of night, and I, amidst this unprecedented panic selling, acted like a ravenous leviathan, swallowing the core assets of these three consortia at fire sale prices, less than a tenth of their market value. Coupled with the explosive global launch of the first-generation Euromatrix AI, my imperial capital has expanded into a commercial superbeast that commands the awe and fear of all humanity. Today marks the day this monster officially debuts on the Nasdaq, on the giant screens of New York's Times Square and inside the Nasdaq trading floor. Champagne bubbles and golden confetti swirled through the air like a blizzard. I stood at the central console of the trading floor, dressed in my signature black haute couture suit. Valerie clung tightly to my arm, wearing a daringly cut, deep V-gold evening gown and a delicate diamond tiara. It was not just a declaration of her unshakable status as a queen to the outside world, but a proclamation to all of Wall Street that she, Valerie Sinclair, is the only woman for me. Archer. As the final second ticked down on the countdown clock, Valerie and I pressed the electronic opening bell of the Nasdaq together. Clang! 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 The crisp sound of the bell echoed across all of Wall Street. On the giant screens, the stock tickers began to surge at a heart-stopping pace. 100 billion. 300 billion, 800 billion. The moment the numbers finally came to a halt, the entire trading floor fell into a brief, suffocating silence, followed by an explosion of frantic screams loud enough to tear the roof off. $1 trillion. The opening market capitalization of Imperial Capital has directly shattered the historic milestone of $1 trillion. Those former Wall Street giants, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, now seem as insignificant as corner convenience stores in the face of Imperial Capital. In his mind, the system's mechanical female voice spoke slowly, carrying a rare, almost human-like inflection. Ding! Congratulations to the host. Imperial Capital's market capitalization has surpassed $1 trillion. Final system assessment. You have completely dismantled the old capital order and successfully ascended to the altar of Wall Street. From this day forward, you are the world's sole rulemaker. The absolute eavesdropping system will be permanently bound to your soul, guarding this trillion-dollar empire for you. I stared at the long string of zeros on the giant screen and took a deep breath. It took me less than a year to go from a bottom-tier analyst burdened with $2 million in debt, facing the constant threat of being dumped into the Hudson River, to the trillionaire king of the earth. This is the ultimate taste of power and money. It is intoxicating to the point of no return. Boss, we did it. Valerie turned around, her deep blue eyes reflecting the golden confetti filling the air and the crowds cheering frantically for me. Her voice was raspy and sensual with extreme excitement. No, darling, I'm the one who did it. I smiled slightly, reaching out to wrap my arm around her slender waist and pulling her into my embrace. And you are my trophy. Valerie didn't resist in the slightest. Her stunning face, once frostily arrogant and untouchable, now bloomed with a seductive smile capable of driving any man in the world to madness. She stood on her tiptoes, ignoring the frantic snapping of countless camera flashes around us, and pressed her crimson lips to my ear. That damn partnership agreement expired a long time ago. Archer. Her breath was sweet as orchids, her voice laced with lethal temptation. Right now, I'm not your CEO. And I'm not your employee. I am your woman. This trillion-dollar empire is yours. And you are mine. With that, she took the initiative and pressed her lips against mine. In the heart of America's most frenetic Vanity Fair of capital, within this Nasdaq hall shrouded in the halo of $1 trillion, I held this once unattainable iceberg goddess of Wall Street, savoring the ultimate euphoria of ascending to godhood. Tomorrow, the world will still be full of lies and betrayals, and the slaughterhouses of Wall Street will continue to stage their daily bloody dramas of the strong preying on the weak. But so what? In this world where even secrets can be seen through by me at a glance, I, Archer Hayes, am the one and only God. The end.